Okay, we're going to wait a few more minutes here to let people have a chance to show up. Okay. I shall be back in a moment.
Sure.
You can come back in a couple of hours. I'm doing good. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Well, you're in a meeting. I'll talk to you later. Okay. Supposed to says I have to sign in to join. Okay, I got it. Sign in with the email or drawing.
Oh, I don't know. Here, just come and sit behind me in the office. Here, take this. I didn't put any restrictions on the bloody account when I set it up. So I don't know what the problem is. Okay. So Chris gave up and I told him just to come sit behind me in the office.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
It is 7:03. We're waiting 2 more minutes. Oh, the real Cindy Cleghorn is here.
That's so funny. The real Cindy Cleghorn. Okay.
Will the real Cindy Cleghorn please stand up?
Yes, I'm here.
Good. So just to let everybody know, as this is a town hall meeting, there are no restrictions that I have found anywhere about having your camera on should you want it. You do not have to remain faceless, but you can if you wish. And with that said, it is 7:04, and this is the Sunland Tujunga Neighborhood Council Education Committee, also known as Youth and Adult Education Committee. This is the first in our series of town halls on life skills. The first life skill is Personal Finance 101, and it's being presented by our very own treasurer, Ed Babakanian. And did I say the date? This is October 5th, 2022. Okay, this town hall has begun. Ed, take it away.
Thanks, Lala, and thanks everyone for allowing me to share this important information. Again, I'm Ed Babakanian. I am not a certified financial advisor. I will go over several items, including investments. However, I'm only offering my own opinion from my own experience. It should only be taken as informational purposes, not for sale, and not as an investment advice. So that disclaimer out of the way, I have been in corporate finance for over 15 years and been in my own personal finance journey for the last 30 or so years, investing and managing money left and right. So I have quite a bit of experience in this field. So I'm happy to share with you a number of things that I've learned and a number of things that I feel like we should all know as those who are involved in our personal finances. So getting started, here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about credit, how to build it, how to use it. We're going to talk about cash, how to make sure that I know exactly how much I have on hand at any given time, and how do I access that cash. We're going to talk about investing, and we're going to talk about protecting all of those items, your investments, your cash, your credit, and your money. So let's get started. Let's start with defining some of these terms. There is a slide in the very end of this presentation, which will be posted online after this talk, that gives several definitions. If anything is still unclear, feel free to email me and I will make it as clear as I can. Let's talk a little bit about money. So what is money? Money is an instrument used to place value on goods, on services in relative terms. What that means is we want to make sure that we have a singular item that we can recognize as this gives me the value of something. Money came from the idea of bartering. So before there was printed money, before there were things that were being exchanged with a set value, we would use bartering. And the problem with bartering is that different things have different values depending on who you're being bartered with, what time of the year it is, what particular value that thing might have at that particular time. For example, let's say, for example, you're a fur trader and you need to go and buy horseshoes. Well, in the winter, you might be able to get horseshoes for a pretty good deal because everyone needs fur, everyone's kind of cold. In the summer, those horseshoes are going to cost you far more, or may not be able to get those horseshoes at all because all you have is fur to trade. So having money allows you to always be able to purchase and get the things that you need. How does finance play into money? Well, finance is roughly defined as the use of leverage to gain something of value. If one doesn't have the cash on hand to purchase something, they can leverage financing, which is other people's money, to get it today. Financing plays a huge role in the US economy. It allows us all to live at a much higher lifestyle than would otherwise be possible. However, it can lead to some negative effects like inflation, overutilization, and putting folks in kind of a bad place if they take on too much credit. Credit works as a leverage. Leverage is basically power that's given by an ability to obtain something of greater value than the current consideration, the current power on hand. So if you're using leverage, you're able to put more power against something than you normally would. We use leverage in the case of lifting items. We use leverage in the case of personal finance from a credit perspective. I will pause after each of the sections for any questions. So as we'll get started here, we'll take those questions. So let's first talk about using money, financing, and leverage in personal finance. The first thing is knowledge. Knowledge is key. If you don't understand personal finance, if you don't understand money, how to track it, how to understand it, it's going to be a very difficult road ahead. Cash accounts. When we have cash on hand, we have a couple places we can store it. Obviously, storing it at home in a safe, in your wallet is one place. Storing it in a checking or savings account to write checks or use a debit card, that's another place. When you do this, when you use the services of a bank, the question we often get asked is, how do banks make money? Well, they make money by loaning the depositor money out and charging a higher interest rate than they pay the depositor. So me as the depositor, I might deposit $1,000 to Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is going to go out and make a loan using my $1,000 and charge that person a 10% interest rate. They may only pay me 1%. So they're making 9%. In addition to the higher interest rate, they also use leverage. So banks in the United States can leverage up to 20, sometimes as high as 40 times their depositors. So if they have a deposit of $1,000 from me, Wells Fargo can actually loan out up to $40,000 and be able to recoup interest on that. So they're not just making a 9% spread on my $1,000. They're making 100% spread on the other 39,000 that they're lending out. We use money and financing to purchase large items, boats, cars, RVs, etc. And we use credit in order to make that happen. Once you have enough money to live the life that you want to live, we'll call that cash flow, the amount of money you have in on a monthly basis, you'll want to start making investments. When you make investments, it means that you have more buying power than you need to survive. And it's always best to invest in something that has future value. For example, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, rental property. Once you have all these things, you've got your large items and you've made investments, you'll want to protect them. And we'll talk a little bit about life insurance, which is commonly known as income insurance, car insurance, personal liability insurance. Always key that you have these items in place so that once you've attained some level of success or some level of assets, you've got some protection in place. As we move forward, we'll talk a little bit about cash account and how to manage your checkbook. So this is something that the current generation probably doesn't use too much. I'm probably one of the few people in my family that still use a check register, which is what's pictured here on the right. When you're using a check register, it allows you to document your deposits and your payments before they even occur. So let's say, for example, I need to pay an electric bill. Well, I'm going to write a check or I'm going to make an online payment. I'm going to schedule it for the future. I can write it in my check register and I will know my running balance of my bank account at any given time. That's one of the main advantages over using a check register over using your online application, which we'll talk about in a second. As we mentioned before, we've got debit cards that are being used now to access the cash that you keep in your bank. So debit cards look a lot like credit cards. They use the Visa and MasterCard network to process costs, but they differ from credit cards in a few unique ways. They work like cash. That means transactions immediately subtract from your account balance. So you can actually spend more money than you have in your account and incur fees, very large fees, which is a large portion of bank profits. You also have limited fraud liability. Most credit card companies have a zero fraud liability on credit, but debit generally has less protections. However, debit cards are preferred by vendors. Usually the transaction fees are much lower than a credit card fee. And that's, again, because it's essentially cash. We even have some regulations in the federal government called the Durbin Act that allow certain types of debit cards to be very low, as low as 10 cents per transaction fee to the vendors that are accepting them. If you do want to use a banking app, you can always sign into your bank's application through their online portal or through the smartphone. If it's important, if you're going to use these, to not store your password on your phone and don't store it in your credit card and your computer so this can be easily stolen. Always check your balances daily since you don't have a check register that would otherwise inform you of how your balance is moving. So let me pause there for just a second. Any questions on using a cash account?
People you got there.
Seeing nothing, we'll continue on.
Sorry?
So
And
let's
I've got a question. Umbrella, can you talk about umbrella insurance and when you'd use that?
Yeah, so we have actually umbrella insurance will come near the end, but very quickly, an umbrella insurance policy is a personal liability policy. And what it does is it takes the underlying policies that you have, your car insurance, your house insurance, any other type of insurance that you want to then wrap around your umbrella. It will take the limits of those all up to a specific limit of the umbrella policy. So for example, $1 million is kind of the the average for an umbrella policy. So the way this works is, let's say your car insurance policy has a upper limit of $500,000 property damage, $250,000 personal property, medical payments damage or physical damage to a person. If you end up running into a Lamborghini, that's $1 million. Your car insurance is going to get maxed out. The owner of that Lamborghini is going to then sue you and try to take your assets. But if you have an umbrella policy in place, it will cover you between that $500,000 property damage gap and up to $1 million. So it protects your assets against a large catastrophic loss. Make sense?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep. All right, moving right along up to credit. So your credit is a gauge of how much people trust you to pay your bills. Accounts are set up and reported to private credit bureaus, who in turn create a score for you. The three main ones are TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Those credit scores range from poor to excellent credit using a number system and a proprietary formula. It's based on a number of factors, none of which is the money you make or your net worth. So I want to just repeat that one time. The amount of money that you make and the amount of assets you have on hand have nothing to do with your credit score. They're generally based on the number of credit accounts that are open and how long they've been open, the average revolving balance and the percentage of credit being used, and whether or not you make your payments on time. If you miss a payment on a very large loan, it will ding your credit score quite significantly. If you're using more than 35% of your available credit, it will ding your credit score significantly. The only time that your net worth or your income come into play when it comes to credit is the amount of credit that you're extended. So let's say, for example, you go to a car dealership and you want to buy a car. If you have excellent credit, they're going to offer you credit. They're going to ask you for pay stubs or some indication of how much money you make. Based on that piece of the pie, they will then extend credit to that level. But your credit report does not say Ed Bebekanian X dollars per year. Anytime you're taking out credit, there are costs involved. Is it good to have a credit score? That depends on who you ask. If you ask a Dave Ramsey type person, he will say no. If you ask a Rob Kiyosaki person, they will say yes, absolutely. Leverage other people's money wherever possible. But there are costs involved. Interest is generally charged according to how high or low your credit score is. Interest is that you're getting charged. It's expressed as an annual percentage rate or an interest rate. Sometimes during a loan process, you'll also be charged points, which is expressed as a percentage of the loan, generally paid up front. Most of the time we see this in real estate. You'll also see origination fees, also generally seen in real estate. That's just a flat fee that you would pay up front. The last one here is one that's not talked about very often, but it's important. It's called the money factor. The money factor is an interest rate that's imputed, and it's generally for leases. So when you lease a car and you're paying for that 36-month payment, you're not just paying for the length of the depreciation over that 36-month period. You're also paying an interest rate on top of that to the bank who's offering you that lease. So credit that's extended to a borrower is called debt. Always, always, always must be repaid. That's how we continue to grow our credit score and show others that we are credit worthy. We have two types of debt, and depending on the type of item that you're buying, it may fit into one or more of these categories. We have consumer debt, we have business debt. Consumer debt is often looked at as bad debt. Things like credit cards, revolving lines of credit, other types of credit that's used to buy a consumable product. So if you buy something that you're going to use and it will not have value tomorrow, it's highly likely that is a bad debt or a consumer debt. We also have business debt. That is good debt. That's used to build assets. And generally you use that to buy large items that have an increased value over time. So good business debt might be purchasing rental property, right? It has cash flow. It has an income that's producing for you. Or the price of that value, the value of that product, that property is going up over time. So it's appreciating. The interesting one here is things like cars and trucks. Is it bad debt? Is it good debt? It depends. Generally, if that car or truck is part of your business, is allowing you to make money. So let's say, for example, you're an Uber driver and you need to have a a nice car with good gas mileage that's also new, that's probably a good debt for you because it's generating cash flow. Or if you're a landscape engineer and you need to have a truck to bring all your equipment, that's probably a good debt. It's a business debt. It's allowing you to be in business. When it becomes a bad debt is when you park that car, you use it for your daily activities, going to the grocery store and so on and so forth, because cars generally lose value over time. They do not maintain. Credit is very personal. Never share your personal credit information. It's often recommended that you get a credit monitoring system. And there are many apps that do this. Personally, I've used Credit Karma. I use Credit Karma today. It works very well. Also, there's Experian and many others that you can look into. But these allow you to do what's called a soft inquiry on your credit report. So you can check your credit as often as you like. It does not impact your credit score. Any questions on credit? All right. We'll move on to using credit wisely. Credit cards. Let's talk a little bit about this. This is a big one. Most Americans have at least one, and most of us have several. Credit builds over time, but only if you carry a balance. So again, you have to be aware of the amount of interest that you're going to be paying and keep that amount of interest to a minimum. There are thousands of credit cards to choose from, but they usually come in one of 4 types. We have a rewards card, which gives the borrower some sort of cash back or other type of benefit. These usually charge an annual fee. So an example of that might be American Express, Chase Signature. Those types of cards tend to carry an annual fee, but they give you 2, 3, 4, 5% back on your purchases. We also have the balance transfer card. These are really popular today as well. They allow you to transfer balances from other high rate interest cards. So they have a introductory period and a very low, sometimes 0 interest rate. They will have a transaction fee, usually anywhere from 3 to 5%. So let's say, for example, you have $10,000 in credit card debt at 18%, which is not uncommon. If you go and get a balance transfer card, you would then pay 3% of the transaction to move that money to a 0% interest for 12 months. If you pay it off over 12 months, you don't pay any additional interest. If you exceed that 12-month initial period, the interest rate then goes way up, generally much higher than 18%. So then you get in this game of moving money around or moving debt around. The next one we'll talk a little bit about is a charge card. Charge cards are not super common these days, but we have had them in the past. In fact, that was the first types of credit cards that were offered. Initially, they were the American Express card and Diners Club card. They generally would charge you an annual fee, but they do not allow you to carry a balance. This is very important. American Express still offers a charge card, mostly to businesses. They do not allow you to carry a balance month over month, so you must pay it off at the end of the month. Diners Club is actually one of the first, or actually the first credit card offering, and it was good for restaurants and travel. Diners Club still exists today, believe it or not. I did some research on it. They don't still offer this card, but if you had a Diners Club card, it's still supported and accepted at many, many places worldwide. Lastly, retail cards. Retail cards are cards that are offered by a retail store. They offer rewards or incentives, but they can only be used at that specific store. Examples of that are Macy's cards, Target cards, Walmart cards. Now, the thing that's changing on retail cards is a lot of times you go and get a Target card that you think is a retail card only for use at Target, but it comes with a Visa logo on it. Well, if it has a Visa or MasterCard logo on it, you can actually use that anywhere. It's no longer a retail card. Now it's either a rewards card or a standard credit card. So that's becoming commonplace today. When we talk about consumer financing for large purposes like homes, cars, and boats, we have to always keep in mind the law of supply and demand. So price for a product is always impacted by the amount of the product that's available and the amount of people who want to purchase that item. Because of this, U.S. demand is often bolstered by credit. So people using credit cards, going out and purchasing things that they don't have cash to do, increases the amount of demand on that item, thereby driving the cost up, which is one of the reasons why we will continue to have a small amount of inflation year over year, things tend to get more expensive over time. And we'll talk about cars and homes in the next couple of slides. Any questions on credit cards?
Any suggestions on credit repair, or is that not in your bailiwick?
It's not in this particular presentation. Credit repair is an interesting animal in itself. It assumes that something is wrong with your credit report. Generally, what happens with credit repair is a company will request all of the original documents that were signed when you signed up for a credit card, or the debt that you're trying to remove from your credit bureau profile. And if there's 7 different types, and I can send you what those 7 types are, but it's 7 pieces of information that every debtor must have in order to enforce a debt. And if you don't have those 7 pieces of information, one of which is a wet signature on an application, it's not enforceable. So when you're doing credit repair, a lot of times the creditor just doesn't have those things on hand, and so they have to remove it from your credit profile. Most of the time, they will then come to you and say, "Hey, you got this debt. You really need to sign this thing," and they get the information that way. But you have a period of time where those items get removed from your credit profile, and your credit score will go up very, very quickly.
We should talk later.
All right. So we'll talk about homes and cars. When we're talking about a home, this is an interesting one. This is a place that I really like to dive in. As we get into this, and it is noted in the presentation a few times, be very careful when you're purchasing a home. It is one of the largest purchases you'll ever make. Many of us are buying our personal property. Others will buy investment properties. Really need to be knowledgeable about purchasing property when you get into this type of deal. So when you're purchasing a home, most of us, 90% plus, will purchase using a loan, right? And so there are 4 types of loans, main types of loans. There's the conventional loan, which is the one that we're most familiar with. It requires anywhere from 15 to 20% down. And then you'll have kind of the best interest rates that are available. If you have less than 20% down, so let's say you're getting that 10 or 15% loan on a conventional scale, you will have to have private mortgage insurance. Private mortgage insurance runs about 75 basis points of your loan, and you must carry that. It does not protect you. It protects the lender against default. This is something you can get rid of once you have 20% equity in the property. So if you bought something with 15% down, 2, 3, 4 years later, the property is appreciated, you paid down the loan, maybe you have 20% equity, you can refinance that loan or ask that the PMI be removed, depending on who the mortgage guarantor is of your mortgage. If it's Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, which we'll talk about in a second, you actually have to wait 11 years to get it removed. So it behooves you to just refinance and go and get a new loan. Under conventional, we have the standard 15 or 30-year terms. The best rates are the 15-year terms. Aside from the conventional, we have FHA. Most people will use FHA as a first-time homebuyer program. FHA stands for the Federal Housing Authority, and it's basically a loan that is guaranteed by the federal government. You can get a loan as low as 3% down. It does carry a higher interest rate, higher qualification criteria, and private mortgage insurance. And when we say qualification criteria, it means that because you have so little equity in the property, they're going to want to see more income to carry the loan. Many times we look at what's called the debt to income ratio. For FHA loans, it's a little higher than on conventional loans. This is the debt to income ratio that I'm talking about here. So for a conventional loan, it's anywhere from 43 to 45%. For FHA, it can go up to 50. I think even I've seen 55% nowadays, which is really scary. And I'll talk about why. The other 2 types of loans that we see often are the VA loan, which is offered by the Department of Veteran Affairs. Most of these have no down payment and no PMI, but you must be affiliated with the military to qualify. You can be active military, retired military, military spouse, military children, somehow affiliated with the military in order to qualify for this loan. It is a fairly easy loan to qualify for, but the caveat there is you have no skin in the game, right? You have no money out of pocket against this house. So it's very easy to go underwater, which means you owe more than the house is worth when you get into these types of loans, this one and the FHA loan. So again, be very, very careful about that. The last one we'll talk about is hard money or non-conventional loans. These are generally not used to buy your personal property. It's used to invest. But I have seen people buy their personal property with hard money in order to get a quick close, because hard money is basically someone else's money and they're just loaning you that money. You can close escrow in 5 to 10 days with hard money, whereas a conventional loan takes minimum 30, 45 days to close. On hard money and non-conventional, you're going to pay points, which is those fees we talked about earlier. You're going to have a much higher rate. You're going to have a very short term, usually anywhere from 12 to 60 months. I think I've seen on the high end, but most of the time it's 12 to 24. A lot of times they will offer you interest only because they want to make as much interest as they can, and it does help you a little bit on your cash flow. But keep in mind, it is a very expensive way to purchase a property. And again, it's used to purchase investment property generally rather than primary residence. And the reason why that is the same thing I just mentioned. Somebody will want to purchase a property very quickly. If they've got somebody hot on the line, they can purchase it under market value. Let me give you cash. If somebody offers to buy a property from you for cash, it's generally not their cash. It's a hard money lender that's giving them the cash to purchase that property. And then they will fix it up or go and get a conventional loan against that property later on. When we talk about buying a house, the general rule is housing costs should not exceed 30% of your gross income. However, lending standards, as I mentioned earlier, can allow total debt, including housing costs, to be 43 to 45% of your gross income. These are the loans that are backed by the federal government. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are two government agencies, quasi-government agencies, that will guarantee the loans. What happens though is as you get closer to this 45%, you're going to have a much higher rate, very high risk of default. I would not go and get a loan if your debt to income ratio is 45%, unless you have a very high gross income. That's about the only time I could see that making sense. Now, below here, I have an example of a house in Tujunga, just so we can all be on the same page in terms of what it costs to own a house these days. So when you're talking about buying a house, you've got the cost of principal, insurance, interest, property taxes, and maintenance. Many of us forget about the maintenance cost until a water heater breaks and you're out $3,000 and you've got no pennies to show for it. Always got to have something put aside for that. So today, if we look at an example, we can look at a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in Tujunga. On average, is about $800,000. If we're able to get a conventional loan, so again, I'm putting 20% out of pocket. And last week, I could have got a 6.5% loan on a 30-year mortgage. This week, it's closer to 7%. But the cost on that 80% of the house is $4,045 per month just for principal and interest. Then you got to add in $100 for insurance, $833 for property tax, and another $495 per month, that holdback that I mentioned earlier, for maintenance. That means your payment is $5,454 per month that you need to pay in order to own this home. In order to comfortably afford this home, again, comfortably afford means no more than 30% of your gross income. You should have a gross income monthly of $18,000 or an annual salary of $218,000 per year. If you don't, it's highly unlikely. It's highly unlikely you're going to sleep well at night with this kind of loan. If you don't make at least $218,000 per year. And this is part of the problem we're seeing in localized areas like Los Angeles, where the price of a home in the last few years has gone from $350,000 for a 3-bed, 2-bath to over $800,000. Last year, a 3-bed, 2-bath was $1 million in our city. So this is quite a challenge. Any question on using credit to buy a home?
Ed, this is Cindy. On the scenario below that you were pointing out, the 4,045.24 principal and interest, is that monthly or is that a different time range?
Oh, that's monthly. So the way I got that, Cindy, and if you've got a financial calculator, you can run the number. 80% of $800,000 is $640,000. $640,000 over 30 years at 6.5% interest is $4,045 principal and interest every month.
I've seen a different scenario on that 640,000 to figure it may turn out to be the same. I don't know, as multiplying 1.25 or 1.3. Is that old? Technology.
That would assume a 3 or 4% interest rate. That's probably an older rate because now you're looking at 6.5% interest.
Okay, thank you.
We still use 1.25 for property tax though. So maybe that's what you're thinking. 1.25% is your property tax
That
rate.
could be, yes.
Yeah. So that's only $800 a month, but assuming you have no loan. All right. We'll continue here and we'll talk about using credit to buy a car or to finance a car. There's two different ways of doing it. You can purchase or you can lease. And I have a couple of examples here for purchases as well, to kind of show you how expensive it can be to purchase a car if your credit isn't great or you choose to go over a longer period. So when you purchase a car, it used to be that the standard purchase was over 36 months. Then it went to 5 years or 60 months. It's now not uncommon to see an 84-month loan on a car. That's a 7-year loan. You're going to pay that month every month for 7 years. And then you can say it's mine. And then you can go and buy a new one because 7 years from now, it'll have 150,000 miles on it. I did put in here for exotics. If anybody's interested, you want to buy a Ferrari, you can get 120-month financing. That's 10 years. Don't do that. But a couple of examples here. So if you wanted to purchase a $40,000 car and you put 20% down, that's $8,000. You have a balance of $32,000. There's a couple of different loans that you could go with. We can still get very low interest rate on cars. It has gone up a bit in the last couple of months, but it's still not bad. So 1.9% for 36 months with a 720 credit score, which is a good score. So 720 plus is generally what's looked at as prime credit score. That gives you a payment of $915 a month. Now, over the 36 months, you're only going to pay $1,000 in interest, $946.12 in interest. If you can afford $915, that's not bad. 1.9% interest is decent, right? When we think about usually inflation's around 2%. So that's kind of the cost of money anyways. If you cannot afford $915 a month, what most of us do is extend the term, right? When you go and purchase a car, the car salesman says, what do you want to pay? They don't ask, what do you want to pay for the car? They want to ask, what do you want to pay per month? Well, if I can afford now $700, I can get a 48-month lease purchase, but I've got to pay 2.9% interest, right? So 1% higher, 1 year more in term, but double the interest. This is over the life of the loan, $1,930 over the life of the loan. If you still are not comfortable at 706, maybe you're a little comfortable at 602, the bank's going to love you a lot because they're going to charge you 4.9% for 60 months. You're going to have a payment of 602 per month, and you're going to pay the bank $4,200 just to get that money, just to buy that car. Consequently, the average payment for a car in the United States is about $550. So it isn't far off from here. So like I say, the average right now is probably in that 60-month time frame where you've got a $500, $550 car payment. This is where most of us are at. So what the difference between these three scenarios is showing you is a slight increase in rate, and just adding 1 year of time can double and quadruple the amount of interest that you pay on that loan. So really, really important to notice what you're paying for, not just the car, but the money to buy the car. Alternatively, you can lease a car. Most leases are 36 months these days. And what happens in a lease is you're paying principal equal to the price of the car minus its value in 36 months. So let's again use our example of the $40,000 car. If the dealership, based on a whole bunch of research, thinks that car is going to be worth $20,000 in 3 years, right, roughly half, they're going to take that $20,000, divide it over 36 months and say, here's your lease payment, but not so fast. They're going to add in there the money factor. So the cost of financing that $20,000. So when you do a lease, you're getting a much lower rate because again, if we use this up here, this scenario here, we get a 36-month purchase on a $40,000 car is a $900 payment. The same 36-month lease on that same $40,000 car, remember, you're only paying $20,000, might only be $450, $500, something in that range, which is more affordable, looks more like this. The difference is in a lease, you have no equity position in general. So you drive that car for 36 months, assuming you don't put any more mileage on it than what's agreed to in your lease. Again, usually 10,000 miles per year. You give the car back and walk away, or you can get another one. It's up to you, but you have no equity, no additional value in that car. Here lately, we have had some equity positions. It's not common. What that means is that when you return the car, it's actually worth a little bit more than you have paid for it over time. And this can be sold. It's usually only a couple $1,000s, not huge. And you can sell this to another dealership. You can sell it to CarMax. You can sell it to Carvana, any number of online places. What they end up doing is they will then purchase the car for what you owe on it, right? The residual value, that extra 20,000. They will purchase it from you for that 20,000. They will go out and sell it for 25,000 and make an extra $5,000. And they're giving you, like I say, a little bit of that dollars to buy your equity position. The choice to buy or lease a car depends on your personal situation. You have to make the best decision and consult your tax attorney, consult your CPA on what may impact your financial life, because in some cases you might want to lease to take a deduction against the business. In other cases, you might want to purchase to write off the mileage that the IRS gives you. Any questions on a car?
And I don't know if this is related, but if you have an older used car, and maybe this is a different workshop, so to speak, but how do you sell the car? If you purchased it, you described a lease situation.
Mm-hmm.
There was a selling it secondhand.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of what's happened at the end of this. So you've purchased the car. Maybe you bought it used, maybe you bought it new. You purchased the car, you paid it off, you now have no payment due, and you want to sell the car. There's lots of places to go. My personal favorite is a company called Bid Lane. It's owned by Kelley Blue Book. They've got a location in Burbank, and not promoting them for any other reason than I've used them 3 times and it's pretty easy. Take your car over there. They will do an appraisal, similar to a company called CarMax. They will then look online at an active auction to see what your car is selling for, and they will purchase it on the spot. They'll make you an offer right then and there. That's the easiest way and fastest way of selling a car. It is not the way that you will get the most money for your car. If you have a popular car, so let's say, for example, you have a Honda Accord or Toyota Camry, which are very popular in the used car market, Facebook Marketplace is a good place to sell it. Auto Trader, if you have a newer one, because then you're going to pay some fees to advertise the car, but you will get far more for it than you would at Bid Lane, CarMax, Carvana, any of those places. Is that the answer that you're looking for?
Well, yeah, it's just that it's an interesting community of people that will come chasing you down and try to offer you money, and they don't even come and look at the car.
Like I said, that's why I just take it to Bid Lane, because I've listed plenty of car on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, and you're right, you get plenty of characters asking, first of all, to lower the price of the car when they haven't seen it yet. Secondly, making an appointment with you to see the car, and then they don't show up. If you don't want to deal with that hassle, just take it down there. It's in Burbank, very easy. It's a half an hour process and your car's gone and you got a check in your hand.
Wow. Great. Thank you.
Yep.
That's for you.
All right. So now we get to the fun part, investing. So remember, investing means that you have more money on a monthly basis than what you need. If you have credit card debt, if you have other types of debt that you're carrying a balance, pay that off first. You will never make a higher rate of return than what you're paying out on credit card interest. I'll tell you that right now, there's not a way to make 18, 20% consistently on investing your money. So pay your credit cards off first. Now you got a little extra money. Let's invest it. And there's kind of 4 types of investments that I'll talk about here. There's literally thousands of types of investments that you can get into. But the most popular one is real estate for folks who are looking to build wealth. If you were to look at the Forbes 500 richest people in the world, I would say 80% plus of those who didn't inherit their wealth got it through real estate, either through building it or protecting it. There's lots of unconventional ideas in real estate, and it is a very risky way of investing. It's a fun way of investing. I speak from experience, but this can get you into a lot of trouble very quickly because houses are very expensive. Do not expect to go to a 3-day seminar on real estate investing and expect to be an expert in real estate investing. Those things are, that's those fly by night guys. Cindy, you might have, you kind of mentioned it there. These are the guys that have the infomercials at 2 a.m. and they have the, you know, they'll go and rent the local Hyatt and give you a 3-day seminar for free, right? Let me show you how to flip houses.
Oh, been there, done that.
Yes, ma'am. I have too. If you do only that and nothing more, you will lose 90% of the time if you try to invest. You've got to be very savvy about this stuff. But let's talk about it. So wholesaling. Wholesaling is an idea that if you ever hear this idea of no down payment, I bought this house with none of my money, no of my credit, I didn't have to do anything. Well, that's wholesaling. And what these guys are doing is they're cold calling a whole lot of people. It is not easy, and it does not take an hour per week. It takes several hours per day. You're calling people and trying to buy a house off market. Off market means it's not listed on the multiple listing service or MLS. That's what your realtor can see. And when you talk to a realtor, that's where they go. You want to buy a house that's off market, and you want to buy it below the market price. And so what you're doing is you're getting a contract on a house. Let's say this house is worth $800,000, but somebody inherited it. Grandma passed away. I don't want to deal with it. Give me $600,000. It's yours. You say, great, I'll give you $600,000. You write a contract that says I'll give you $600,000, but you're not going to give them $600,000. You're going to call your local investor that you know, your buddy down the street, and you're going to say, hey, I got this great house for you, only $650,000, and it's worth $800,000. And they're going to say 650. Well, about 630. Okay, great. 630, yours. You're going to assign that contract over to that real estate investor. And now you've made $30,000 when it closes. That's all wholesaling is doing. They're just getting a house under contract and moving that contract. What happens though, is if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know your buddy down the street is an investor, you get stuck with a contract you can't sell. Now you either have to close or you're going to lose what's called earnest money, the amount of money you put up. To kind of start that work. So very, very important to get some education around wholesaling before you do it. Fix and flip, very popular. HGTV has a billion shows about this stuff. This is where somebody is buying a property that is run down or old, fixing it up and selling it. So the intention here is that you've, first of all, bought it below market, right? So you're not paying market rate. You're able to put minimal dollars into it and get a maximum value. Usually you'll see the fix and flip a new kitchen, new flooring, new paint, new bathroom, not much else, right? So electrical, that's still going to be old. Plumbing, probably still going to be old. Roof, not going to touch that because all those things were expensive. But if you can fix and flip a property, that can make a pretty decent return on investment. This is not a wealth maker. This is a business. And so once you fix and flip that property and you make your $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 profit, now you got to go find another house to fix and flip and another and another. It's not building any wealth because you continually sell the asset. In both these situations, you can use other people's money, right? So in the wholesaling idea, you're using your investor to close the deal. And fix and flip, generally using an investor or a private bank using their money to close this deal. Generally, you know, if you don't have any money in the transaction, that's not a good idea, but you can do that with no down payment. The last type of unconventional idea is one that's very popular, and it's getting popular. The name is getting popular now, but it's been around for a long time. This is one where you can build wealth. It's called the BRRRR method. It's buy, renovate, rent, refinance. So again, buy below market, do the repairs similar to fix and flip, except instead of flipping it, instead of selling it, you're now going to find somebody to rent that property. Once you've rented it and you've created value because you've done the renovation, you can go to the bank and say, hey, the property has increased in value. Can you give me a loan against the new value? Take the money out that you spent on renovating it and repeat the process. Now you have a property that's cash flowing with rent. So again, you bought a property, it's got a $3,000 mortgage, you're renting it for $3,200. You're making $200 a month. You own the house and you have no money in it because you've refinanced it. You're going to take that money and go and do it again and again and again and again. Burr method is very, very popular. Does not work in Los Angeles in general. You won't see folks, if you talk to people who invest in real estate, they do not invest in Los Angeles and Southern California, basically in general, with this method.
Why not?
It's very, very hard to get enough rent to offset the mortgage. So remember our $800,000 house over here, where it's $5,500 a month just to pay the expenses. Who's going to rent it? It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Who's going to pay $5,500 a month to rent it?
Not me.
That house, yeah, I know. I mean, today this house in today's market rents for about $3,500. So you're upside down $2,000. It does not make sense.
Right.
Yeah, but in the Midwest, you can buy a house for $150,000 and get it rented for $1,400, and you pay you are receiving far more than the mortgage. So you're making positive cash flow there. So that's where you'd want to do that.
Okay.
Outside of real estate, we've got a few other types of investments you can make. Stocks and bonds, very, very popular. A stock is an equity ownership in a company. That means that you purchased a portion of that company. The value of the stock is not tied to the profitability of the company. It's based on the supply and demand of the stock. And the supply and demand of the stock is based on a whole bunch of stuff. Here recently, you may remember what's called a meme stock, a stock that's being discussed heavily on social media, and they pump up the value of that stock. And once it reaches a certain point, they sell it. The owners of the stock sell it and they make their money. That's one way that you can make money out of stocks. In general, you'll see people like Warren Buffett, who's a long-term investor. They purchase companies that they use on a daily basis. So if you're a drinker of Coke, like Warren Buffett, you might buy Coca-Cola. Warren Buffett's a multi-billionaire, so he doesn't buy 1%. He buys 40, 50% of the company. And as long as that company stays in demand and stays in good essence with its investors, it will continue to produce an income and it will continue to grow in value. Opposite from that is a bond. A bond is debt. A bond is when you're loaning a company money. So imagine Jeff Bezos, who runs on Amazon, needs to borrow $100 from you. That's exactly what happens. He does a bond offering, and he's looking to raise cash for Amazon that he's willing to pay a coupon rate or an interest rate. He's going to pay 2% interest. If you were to put your money in the bank, you're going to get 0.01% interest. So how about I give my money to Amazon and let them give me 2% interest? That's great. Bond price is also tied to market fluctuations. In addition to that, it's also tied to new bond offerings. So let's use this Amazon example. If Amazon offered a bond at 2% coupon rate, meaning 2% interest, and you purchased it, and then 6 months later, they say, well, the interest rates have gone up. We're going to offer a 3% bond. Now the value of your 2% bond has just dropped because somebody can buy a 3% bond for roughly the same price. So that's what happens in the bond market. Generally, it's good to own both because if one goes up, the other one goes down. They generally move in opposite directions of each other. The last one is crypto. Relatively new, very difficult to understand. Not one I'd get into again without a lot of education on it. But it's not as expensive as buying real estate. Basically, crypto is a coin or a non-tangible item that you're purchasing. And contrary to our monetary system, if you guys don't know this, our monetary system, the money, the dollar, is not based on anything. In the 1970s, Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. So now our money is only backed by the full faith and trust of the US government, nothing more. No gold, no silver, no nothing. When you're talking about crypto, it is limited in nature. So the most popular crypto is Bitcoin. There are 21 million Bitcoins available. And once all 21 are owned, there are no more available. So it has a finite value. We know that there cannot be any more, and there's not going to be any less either. They don't destroy them. The other piece of crypto, which is what people like, and for various reasons, I think it's more of a lack of trust than anything else. Crypto is protected by what's called blockchain technology. It means that the history of the ownership of those coins is documented. So if I have a coin and I got that coin from Cindy Cleghorn, I know that Cindy owned it, and she got it rightfully from Lala Rowe, and she got it rightfully from Karen Moran. And that is all well documented. Whereas, think about the $10 bill you have in your wallet. I don't remember who gave it to me, and I couldn't tell you who had it before him. So that's the difference between kind of what we call our monetary system versus the crypto system. Also very important, Wall Street, which is where stocks and bonds are exchanged, the New York Stock Exchange, have not put full trust in Bitcoin just yet, or crypto just yet. They do not sell these coins on the stock exchange. They sell them through a private company. Coinbase is one, crypto.com is another. Crypto.com is the company who renamed Staples Center recently. So they expect to make a lot of money out of this stuff. I say good luck to them. Any questions on investing?
I have one on the bonds. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when we pay taxes, our taxes really aren't going to fix the potholes or to even do the schools. There's the city and the county and the state all have bonds, and federal, they have bonds, and they actually sell that. So there's investors buying those bonds. And that's what's actually paying for our city. Who knows where the taxes actually go, but it's the bonds.
In a large part, that's correct. So the city offers what's called a municipal bond. And so that's when the city is saying, hey, we will pay X% to borrow your money to go and fix the roads. And you see that quite a bit. We see that in toll roads. We see that in bridges. We see that in general road maintenance. There is a portion of your tax that is supposed to go to fix the roads. But you're right. There's a little oversight into that. So who knows? So yeah, for the most part, it's investors that are paying to fix your roads.
Right.
And they purchase the municipal bonds to do that.
All right. And I have also heard that with the spending that government agencies do, that it's not a very good risk to buy a public bond, a municipal or state bond. That is.
It depends on the city. I mean, definitely if you were a purchaser of Whittier municipal bonds, Vernon municipal bonds, you would have lost your rear end in the last few years. Those cities went bankrupt. A purchaser of Los Angeles, City of Los Angeles or County Los Angeles bonds, better investment, but again, just like anything else, better investment, lower return. So if you want a high return, you might look at a short-term municipal bond that pays 8 or 10% in one of those cities that's shaky. Barstow, for example. Barstow sells pretty high rate municipal bonds, and so far they've been able to pay that and haven't run into any issue. But yeah, if the city goes bankrupt, the bonds do not get repaid. The only ones that get repaid are the stocks.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
I've got a comment, Karen. My strategy with buying houses has been houses go up and houses go down, and there might be 10 years between them, but you know, when you know that they're going up and they're just not reasonable, they're not supported by the salaries and everything else, that's the time to just hold on to your money. And then when they start to go down and they're, you know, if you're, it's all timing, then you take that money that you've saved, and then you plop it on a house, and everything is really good because, you know, your taxes are based on it in Los Angeles. And that's that's what I advise young people to do. Just wait, and I think we're ready for the houses to take a dive right now across the country. I think that, we've reached a bubble and they're starting to go down even right now.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So housing prices are heavily impacted by the price of a loan, right? So we know the Fed funds rate has gone up. It's now 3.5%, where it used to be 0 beginning of the year. So that's why you have 7% mortgages. When you have a 7% mortgage, the price of the house comes down. So yes, you will have a real estate correction across the country. Areas like Los Angeles, though, probably not going to get hit that bad. Although we look at it, we're like, how can you afford $800,000? I don't know. They're paying for it, but there's huge demand still for Los Angeles. So will it correct hugely? I don't know. What I'm hearing is anywhere from 10 to 15% in high metropolitan areas like Los Angeles. The Midwest that I mentioned, probably as much as 25% correction. So that means a correction means a reduction. But you're right. If you're good at timing the market, and we know, I'm in my mid 40s, I've seen 3 corrections in my lifetime. They are 10, 12 years apart. So if you can kind of spot those corrections and buy at the low end of the market when it's already happened and ride the wave, yes, absolutely. Los Angeles is a great place to buy for appreciation. Like I said, not a good place to buy for cash flow. So if you can manage the difference between the payment and what you can get on rent and just hold it for appreciation, you can make a ton more money than you would in trying to cover, on a monthly basis, making $100, $200. That's not going to do anything for you. But where your property values typically in Los Angeles will increase 6 to 7% per year. In the last few years, we've seen 10, 12, 15% increase year over year. That's again why we went from $300,000 in 2008 when I purchased a property, when I purchased a property here in Los Angeles, to today where a similar property is worth $1 million, and we're still scratching our head as to why. But I mean, that is a great piece of advice. If you're able to save, let me say this. So if you're able to save and put the money in a place that's growing appropriately, so if you're putting your money into stocks and bonds, and you're just kind of letting that grow, and then you take it out and purchase a property, yes, I completely agree with you. Putting that money in the bank or just sitting on it when you have 2 and 3 and 4% inflation, I don't know that I would recommend that. Just holding cash. Put it somewhere where it can grow a little bit each year, and then when you're ready to buy, yes, dump it into a house. Anything else on investing? All right, we'll keep going here. So the last couple of slides are really around insurance. So really, really important that you have insurance. Insurance exists to protect customers from catastrophic and unplanned losses. You always get what you pay for in insurance. It's just like anything else. The fact that you purchased an intangible, meaning you can't touch it, piece of paper does not mean that they're all the same. There are different limits. There are different things that they cover. Very, very important that you know what you're purchasing when you buy an insurance policy. We'll talk a little bit about life insurance and health insurance in this section here. So life insurance, which I like to call income insurance, exists to ensure that if someone passes away unexpectedly, their survivors have a means to continue their financial lives. That's really important, especially where you have a single earner in the family or one who earns quite a bit more than the other. So let's say, for example, you've got a husband and wife. One of those two earns $200,000 a year. The other one doesn't earn anything, or maybe earns $50,000 a year. If that person who is earning $200,000 a year suddenly passes away, the person earning $50,000 a year has to somehow figure out how to make an extra 200 grand. And so in order to protect that or give them time to grow that, we purchase life insurance on that high earner. So if something does happen, we're covered. Excuse me. We have generally 2 types of life insurance that we would purchase: a whole life policy or a term life policy. A whole life policy is popular and unpopular at the same time. It's popular to folks who are looking to use it as a growth vehicle for wealth, because a whole life policy is insurance for life, for the lifetime. As long as you continue to make that premium payment, you will have insurance. It doesn't have an expiration date, but it has an investment vehicle tied to it. What that means is there is a mutual fund, a bond fund, a stock fund that's being invested in, that your insurance premium is being invested in for the future. Some people don't like that because it's not directed by the self, it's directed by a professional manager. People want to be in control of their own investments, and they want to separate their insurance from their investment. Me personally, I like whole life insurance. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially if you purchase it when you're young, because it accumulates value beyond what's called the face value of the property of the insurance. So let's say, for example, you purchase a $250,000 whole life policy, and you kept that for 30 years. It's highly likely that that whole life policy isn't worth $250,000. It's worth 300 or 350 or something higher than that face value, because it has a cash value in addition to that face value. Why do wealthy people like whole life insurance? Well, the cash value can be borrowed against in life. You don't have to wait until that person passes to take advantage of a whole life policy. So let's say you've gained $30,000 in face value in additional benefit over the face value over some period of time, and you come across a large expense in your 60s or 70s. Well, you can borrow against that $30,000 up to 90% of it under current law, tax-free. Hint, hint. Which is why wealthy people tend to put a lot of money in these, because they're not paying taxes on loans. They're only paying taxes on income. The one thing to keep in mind is a whole life policy generally has a much higher premium than term, which is one reason why people tended to steer away from them, especially in the early earning years. They've gotten a bad rap. Those people would prefer to purchase a term life insurance. And again, that is generally used to protect the family during the working years. Usually it's a 20-year span from age 40 to age 60 that you want to kind of make sure you're protected. These policies do have an expiration period. Again, if you're buying a 20-year term and you bought it when you were 40, the minute you turn 60 and one day, it no longer has any value. So you're basically, in this case, and in any case with a life insurance policy, you're betting against yourself. You're betting that, well, let me just make sure in case something happens to me, my family's taken care of. But once I get to age 60 plus one day, this thing has no longer any value. It is much lower cost than a whole life policy. So from that perspective, it's a good buy. Either one of them, I would say, is a good buy. This is my own personal opinion. Again, I don't sell life insurance, but I would not want to see anybody without a policy, especially in the working years. Health insurance.
Oh, Ed,
yes.
On insurance, recently I've heard that the whole life policy has I always thought they went for your life, till you pass away, and then they are cashed out at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a deadline to them. And so what's the opportunity? First, the person buys it thinking they're going to get X number of dollars worth of insurance.
Mm-hmm.
There is a cash value to it, yes, but what's the insurance? And now you're older, what's the one to flip over to get? I mean, it's kind of odd situation, or maybe it's just a particular situation. I agree. I like and prefer the whole life insurance rather than the term.
Yeah. And again, it all has to do with being really careful what you purchase and knowing what you're purchasing. So whole life, when you purchase it from an authorized dealer or a salesperson, they should go over with you, hey, under this premium, right? Let's say your premium is $300 a month for a $200,000 policy. If you continue to pay $300 a month forever, this will cover you until age 90 or 95, or pick a number. And you choose the number that you are comfortable with, and they will adjust your premium accordingly. But sometimes they will say, it's just like buying the car. I can't really afford $300. I could do 200. Okay, cool. Well, 200. Now by the time you get to, let's say, age 70, right, your monthly cost of insurance is higher than $200 a month. So that premium you're paying isn't even covering the cost of insurance. They're using the cash value to make up the difference. And eventually that cash value goes away. And so when you get into your 70s and you think that, hey, now I've got some opportunity to loan against this, you're stuck without any policy at all because it has
Yeah.
expired.
That's exactly it. Yep. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's really, really important to know what you're purchasing up front. And if somebody sold a policy like that and wasn't clear, sucks to be them. That's what you got to watch out for. Don't buy from that guy anymore. So, and it wasn't me.
But there should be a flip over. In other words, okay, now you know this now. What's a way of fixing the situation?
You would purchase a new policy, but the older you get, the more costly the policy is. The good thing about purchasing a whole life policy when you're young, and I'll give you this piece of information again, this is just me. I have 3 children. We talked about early on. Each of my 3 children have a life insurance policy today. Why? It guarantees insurability. Because later on, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe they're going to start smoking. Maybe they're going to have heart issues. Maybe they're going to have, who knows, diabetes. All those factors makes the cost of insurance more expensive. And so if you try to do that flip over, like you said, you realize 20 years down the line, 10 years down the line, that this isn't the best product for me, I need to get something else. You basically are going to stop paying on that first one or sell it for the cash value that it has today and purchase a new policy. But that new policy is expensive, and you may be excluded from it for various reasons, those health reasons I just mentioned. So really, really important to get it early and really understand what it is you're purchasing from day one.
Yeah.
Any other questions on health and life insurance? And we'll talk about health. All right. So as I mentioned, life insurance and insurance in general protects customers from catastrophic and unplanned losses. Health insurance is an exclusion when you think about its real purpose. Its real purpose is not to protect you from an unplanned loss, because you're going to get sick. Everybody does. What it does is it spreads the cost of healthcare over a large population. So a bunch of people pay $500 a month in case they get sick, so that the one guy who does get sick doesn't have to pay $500,000. Does that make sense? So that's why we have health insurance. And again, it's just like the other stuff. You're gonna get what you pay for. So an example might be, you go on Covered California's website today. Covered California is a state-operated exchange, meaning this is a place that health insurance companies sell their products. They will sell you any number of products with any number of pricing points. What we have today is federally mandated through the Accountable Care Act, a metals plan. It's a 60% plan, 70%, 80%, 90%. Or if you see it online, it'll be bronze, silver, gold, platinum. Each one is more expensive than the other, has higher benefits. So if you purchase the bronze plan and you go to use it, that 60% refers to how much the insurance is covering. So you're out of pocket 40%. Every time you use it, you're going to have a very high co-insurance or cost associated with that. And you might think, but I got insurance. Yes, you got the cheapest insurance on the market, and now you're going to pay for it. So it's best to find out which one is right for you. Again, young and healthy, I still wouldn't recommend bronze. Maybe silver is okay for you. If you have some medical problems, look at the gold, look at the platinum. They're going to be a little more expensive on the premium side, but they're going to cover a lot more of your expenses and you won't have as much out of pocket. When we talk about health insurance, we have 2 main types of networks that you can use. And you may have heard these terms, PPO and HMO. So the PPO refers to a preferred provider network. What that means is the insured can visit any provider in the insured's network. So let's say, for example, you purchase a policy from Cigna, and they have a PPO network throughout California. You can go to any of their PPO doctors who accept Cigna and be seen. There are deductibles that I just mentioned, right? So you might have $1,000 deductible. What that means is you've got to pay the first $1,000 before the insurance pays anything. There's an out-of-pocket maximum. It might be $2,500. It means that once you get to $2,500, your insurance will pay 100% of all charges. You also want to be aware of out-of-network coverage. So again, I'll use Cigna as an example. They have a large network, but it's not the largest. And so if you happen to go see a doctor who doesn't take Cigna, maybe he said he thought he took Cigna, but he doesn't take Cigna, you're going to get hit with out-of-network charges, which are significant. So something to be really careful about on the PPO. PPOs, you'll have a cost share that you'll have to pay. And each time, like I say before, on the metal plan, 60, 70, 80, 90% covered by the insurance, you pay the difference on a PPO. They typically will have a lower cost point, a lower premium than an HMO. An HMO refers to a health maintenance organization. Under an HMO, your total care is managed through your primary physician or physician group. So let's say, for example, you've bought a policy from Blue Shield of California, and your primary physician group is Optum. Well, you're going to go to Optum every time you need to access care. You're going to see your primary physician. You're going to say, hey, my leg hurts. Can you refer me to a orthopedic surgeon for a consult? But you got to go see your primary first, and he will have to refer you. You got to wait till you get a referral back, all that fun stuff. It's a little more time consuming, but it tends to be less costly on the out-of-pocket spend than a PPO. So remember, you're just paying 30, 40 bucks to go see the doctor versus some percentage of whatever they're billing you. So that's high-level health insurance. Again, this is one that is really scary. Under the Affordable Care Act, everybody has to have insurance. There's no longer a penalty, but there's so much insurance available to anybody. Anybody who wants it can get it. Even those who can't afford it, you'll get Medi-Cal, or you'll get a highly subsidized meaning the federal government pays the premiums for you, plan through Covered California. So really, really important. Everybody has insurance, but always make sure you know what you purchased. Any questions on that? And this is something I can definitely provide more direction on. I actually work for a large insurance company. So if anybody has questions about this, I'd give you more opinions. So to wrap up the insurance section here, in addition to ourselves and our money, we need insurance for the stuff that we do, right? So we drive a car, we have a house, all that stuff. And we talked a little bit about earlier the general liability or umbrella policy. So this section kind of covers that. When we talk about automobile policy, anybody who's driving a car has to have insurance in California. The minimum limit that the California requires is $5,000 of property damage, $15,000 of personal injury. What does that mean? Well, I'm out driving around one day and I have an accident and I run into a 25-year-old Honda. It's going to be a couple $100. If they were to salvage the car, I'm covered on my limit, on my minimal coverage. So that's okay for me. But what happens if that's not a 25-year-old Honda? It's a 2022 Mercedes. Now you've just created $20,000 in damage on a car. You only have $5,000 in coverage. That means they're going to come after your assets. They're going to sue you personally. Highly likely they'll sue you personally. And that's before we talk about personal injury. So when we talk about limits, very few of us, if any, should ever have the minimum. The only time I would say minimum is maybe your first time driver, you have no assets. So if somebody sues you, big deal, you're not going to get anything. You can't get blood from a turnip, that kind of thing. But beyond that, I would always carry a fairly significant amount of insurance, especially given where we live in Los Angeles. You're highly likely to run into a Mercedes, BMW, something like that. And you're going to need to have those limits higher. The maximum insurance coverage you can get in Los Angeles is $250,000, $500,000. So $250,000 property damage, $500,000 personal injury, and then you can get a umbrella policy that takes that to $1 million if you're so inclined and you have the assets that you're concerned about. Not likely you would have $250,000 in property damage, but highly likely if you were to cause significant injury or death, you would have $500,000 of personal injury claims against you. So something to consider when you're talking about policies. Then we have liability insurance, which is what we've been talking about, and comprehensive insurance or full coverage. Remember, liability insurance does not pay to fix your car. It only pays to fix the other person's car or the other person's property that you've damaged. You would need full coverage or comprehensive coverage to pay for both the other person's car and your car. This is also required if you have a loan on a car. So if you're financing a car or leasing a car, you must have full coverage insurance during that time, because the bank wants to make sure that if you crash the car, it's going to get fixed. Also, we have homeowners insurance policies. Homeowners insurance policy is just like anything else, can run the gambit in terms of what they cover. In general, they will cover either replacement cost of your home or market value of your home. If you get market value, it's going to be significantly more, right? Because the cost of repairing your house is not $800,000. The market value of your house is $800,000. And so it's best to get replacement coverage to keep your costs down. They have varying deductibles as well. So again, you can kind of adjust those items to affect your annual premium or semi-annual premium that's associated with that. House insurance, home insurance also provides damage coverage for anybody who gets hurt on your property. So that's good. It comes with a personal liability policy baked into that. Again, fairly low limit, anywhere from $100,000 up to $500,000 in general. One thing to note, in California, we have earthquakes. An earthquake is not covered under California homeowners insurance policies. Fire and flood resulting from plumbing inside your house is generally covered on our home insurance policies. If you want to buy earthquake coverage, it's very expensive and it has a very high deductible. You have to figure out if that's right for you. Me personally, I kind of feel like unless the earthquake happens at my house, probably okay. But if I lived in Northridge in 1994, I probably would have said, I wish I would have had earthquake insurance. The last type of insurance we'll talk about here is general liability, which we talked about earlier as being an umbrella policy for all policies below it. So your car insurance, your homeowner's insurance, any other type of insurance you might have, you put the umbrella over the top of it, and it raises the limit of all those insurances to $1 million. These types of policies are not super expensive. They're usually a few $100s a year. Definitely worth the investment if you have assets that could be taken by somebody if you were to injure them, or they know that you have assets, because then they will find a way to get injured on your property, being that we live in a litigious state. Any question on this type of insurance? Again, protecting what you own and protecting yourself. All right. So I think that's it, and kind of tie everything together with this slide here. Oh, go ahead.
I've got a question and go back. Can you talk about credit freezes? I'm a big fan of them, and why they're better than credit monitoring.
Credit freezes, meaning no one can even run a credit report,
Got it. You got it.
Credit.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's a couple ways of doing that. There's a general freeze, which you can actually contact one of those three credit bureaus that I mentioned earlier, and let them know. You should actually contact all three, that no one is allowed to run my credit. And there's a couple things they'll do. Either no one will be able to run your credit, and that's that, or they will send you a notification that says, hey, Karen, XYZ company wants to run your credit. Are you okay? And you say yes or no. That's one way of doing your credit freeze. That is a full freeze. Like, no one can do anything when you have that in place. The other type of freeze that we see is on individual cards. So if you've got a credit card, let's say you've got a Discover card, a Chase card, a lot of times within the application for the cards, if you download it to your smartphone, my Discover app, for example, I can turn off my card. It cannot be used. So if I swipe my card, nothing will happen. It gets declined. Somebody took my card, right? So I think maybe you're thinking about, crap, I lost my credit card. I can't find it. I may have left it at the restaurant. I may have left it, I don't know where. Let me quickly put a freeze on that. I can put a freeze on that card alone if I want to, or I can go and do the full TransUnion thing and block my credit altogether. But it's always important to have those options. Generally, credit freeze is not, doesn't charge you a fee. If it does, it's very small. And it protects you against unwanted runs of your credit report, which impact your credit score. And of course, if somebody were to get your identity, which is very common these days, they can actually open up a credit account in your name. That's part of the reason why using Credit Karma, I kind of have those alerts set up. If anybody runs my credit, automatically get an alert. If a new bank if a new loan is added to my credit, I get an alert, and I can monitor it that way. But you're right, it doesn't stop anything. What you have to do then is call that company and say, hey, that wasn't me, close the account immediately. It's not mine. Does that help?
Yeah, the credit freeze to me, and if you take them off, if you want to, if you want the ability to have somebody run a credit against your credit, you can do it easily, but it stops anybody. If somebody's trying to buy a house in your name or buy a car or get a credit card or anything, the first thing they're gonna do is run your credit. And when it comes back 000, with all 3 credit unions, nobody's gonna give them a loan. So
Yeah.
you're totally protected from identity theft, in my opinion, when you just have it. And they advise it for children too, because you could have a child and maybe when they're 18, they find out that their credit's a mess because somebody had fraud against them, when they were 4 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the kid one is an interesting one too, because you're right. I mean, I've heard of that many times. The kid goes and they've turned 18 and they want to go get their first credit card and they find out they have 15 electric bills and 5 cars and maybe even a house that's not been paid for. Luckily, because that kid is under 18, it's pretty easy to go and get that stuff off their credit report because technically in the United States, you cannot have any loans or extensions of credit if you're under the age of 18. So you prove that and that loan goes away, but it takes a long time. Fighting credit cards, and I think somebody asked a question earlier around credit cleanup. That takes a lot of effort. I wouldn't say it's difficult, but it's time consuming. And so especially if you're trying to clean up credit that's not even yours, because now you have to prove that it's not yours. It can take a lot out of you. So it's really a pain. But I would still rather have credit than not have credit and just keep an eye on it, either doing the freeze, as you mentioned, or the credit monitoring.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah. So just kind of tying everything together, we kind of start at the bottom of this slide rather than the top. So you always want to add knowledge to the cash that you have on hand. So you want to educate yourself about the cash on your hand and your personal financial situation. You want to leverage the knowledge and the cash to build, to be able to purchase what you need to live. So in terms of your house, your car, you always want to make sure you live below your means. And many of us have heard this and none of us are really good at it, myself included, but live below your means so that you have some extra dollars to invest for the future. We never know how much we're going to need in the future, how long that's going to need to last. So the more you can invest and for the longer period, the better. Remember, there's a thing called the time value of money. What that says is basically the earlier you start to invest, the better it's going to perform for you over time. So starting to invest $200 a month at age 20 is far better than investing $400 a month at age 40, for example. If you run that out over a 40 or 50 year timeline, the 20-year-old is going to have more money, even though they're investing less dollars per month. And that's because they've got more money, more time not to let that grow. So invest for your future, and then always carry appropriate insurance for peace of mind. And again, this just allows you to sleep well at night, knowing that all this work I've done to buy my house, buy my car, build my investments, build my portfolio for the future is protected. No one can take it from me. And that is it. Any other questions that I haven't addressed so far? And this is the glossary of terms if you need to and refer back to this one.
Oh, great.
Very, very informative.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, it was good. It was quite thorough, yet concise.
Thanks.
Yeah, outstanding. Thank you, Ed. We're gonna, is it okay with you that this is posted so that people can listen to it later?
Yeah, absolutely. And Lala has the presentation, so you can post that as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so it is, yeah, I have the slideshow and it is being recorded. We want to get it up on YouTube and on the STNC site, because we're going to have other life skills town hall / seminars in the future. All right, so does anybody else have anything else at this point? So I'm going to stop the recording. It is 8:29. Okay.
Awesome.